This is not a dream. We are using your preferred podcast provider as a receiver.
Hello and welcome to Live from Manchester Morgue, the horror movie podcast that ranks 25th globally in Morgue content search results, apparently.
I'm so glad that you did that fact.
I don't even know how. What are the Morgue podcasts are there that people are searching for?
I'm not saying that we shouldn't, as a society, be talking about morgues, but come on.
I mean, this was provided to us by something called Podseo Analytics, which I got an email about it telling us that we were 25th in Morgue.
So this is where we are as a podcast now. We're getting and using analytics.
Well, I mean, I didn't sign up for it, that I remember, but we got some analytics, and we're 25th in Morgue content.
Yes.
I dread to think what the 24 podcasts are that are about.
I kind of really want to find out, though.
I kind of do, and I kind of don't. It could be like a Pandora's box we're opening there. I'm not sure I want to open that kind of worms. We got some feedback. I didn't share this with you before because I wanted to get your live reaction while we recorded.
Yeah, live.
I listened to episode 2 while I was reorganising my wardrobe. It was great. You've hit on a really good format. Can't wait for the next episode to drop.
That's really good.
That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really... I like that us waffling on with really bad inner city accents is good for people folding clothes and
bit of ironing, whatever. I won't say who that was because they didn't explicitly give me permission to use their name. It was just a bit of feedback they decided to give us. So, but thank you. You know who you are.
Yeah.
If you're into the show, it'd be very helpful if you give us a rating on your platform of choice or a comment. You can leave comments if you're listening on Spotify. And if you listen right to the end of the show, we do give out our contact details for social media and such. And that's it. So tonight's episode, we're going to talk about Threads because we love traumatizing ourselves.
Yeah, if we have to.
And 1992's Ghostwatch. And we've got a very special guest on in a bit. We've done an interview, but we'll talk to you more about that in a bit. So Ghostwatch. I've got some shout-outs on social media from people about Ghostwatch, if you want me to read a couple of those out first, Ken.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah. So this was mainly on Blue Sky because we're not on the Twitters anymore. So on Blue Sky, Bill Oddie's stunt double says, I was 11 when Ghostwatch came on. I remember going to school the next day. Everyone was talking about it and convinced it was real because there was no way Michael Parkinson would do a spoof show. Fair comment.
100%.
I think that's what we all thought.
Yeah, so before you do any more responses, I need to get this out here because I only recently found out. So I recently showed my partner Ghostwatch and she'd previously never seen it. And it was maybe my second or third time ever watching it. The first time obviously being when I was 8 years old.
The bad time.
Yeah. And apparently, so we'll talk a bit about this later, but it was part of a fictional anthology series anyway. And there was an announcement before, BBC used to do that, like we saw the Spinning Globe, and it was like, here is a blah, blah, blah fictional ghost tale. I don't think I watched that because my mum let me stay up and watch Ghostwatch, and I don't think I watched that. And if I did, my little 8-year-old brain didn't understand it. So by the time I got to the end of Ghostwatch, I was convinced that Parkinson was dead.
Yeah,
and Mr. Pipes killed him.
Well, actually, that kind of does line up another quote from someone on the Blue Sky socials. They're going to say, I'm not sure why Ghostwatch fooled so many people. It was billed as a drama and was obviously fake. There's no real comparison between Threads and Ghostwatch, which obviously we're going to talk about later. The latter is a horror, but clearly not real. But I think that's the thing. We hit upon this in the interview that we're going to play in a little while, but I think when Ghostwatch came out, I was 12, and I absolutely would not have paid attention to any sort of opening credit sequence that told me that it was all drama.
I was 8 years old, sat in a council house. I'd probably never seen many films with special effects before, Like I used to read comic books. I was in my own little world. For all intents and purposes, ghosts were real, and BBC had told me. Like in hindsight, seeing it now, yeah, of course,
Yeah, I mean, it'd be obvious to an adult, wouldn't it? But I wasn't an adult.
Yeah, and I mean, arguably, as we're going to talk about, Ghostwatch is still incredibly effective to watch now.
Well, it's influenced a lot of stuff, hasn't it, as well?
Yeah.
It's got an incredible legacy, has Ghostwatch.
Yeah, but yeah, the point stands. Like, I do agree with that commenter that, yeah, it's obviously fake, but I was a kid, and it was 1992. We didn't have, well, the internet was the internet a thing in 1992? Was it on like a big supercomputer in Langley? I don't know. I just made that up. But basically, we didn't have the internet. I didn't even use a computer. I don't even think I had a games console. TV was just TV. There was like, 3-4 channels. And when BBC said something, your little 8-year-old brain was like, yeah, that's real.
Yeah, what's Sarah Green doing? It was also real because it was just people that you just see on TV doing live stuff.
And
like
let's not forget, obviously, we'll go on with the comments, but obviously talking a bit about Ghostwatch, the BBC were incredibly strategic in how they kind of marshalled the show. It had Parky, who was a bastion of truth in British journalism.
A paragon of truth, yep.
Sarah Green, who was a presenter on Going Live, which was a popular kind of variety, like,
and she was
show.
too lovely to lie to you.
Exactly. I think her partner at the time was the other guy, Mike Smith. He was a Blue Peter.
He was just a wholesome guy. He was on TV all the time.
Yeah,
being wholesome.
And then of course we've got Craig Charles.
Charles.
Everyone just knew as just like a popular presenter, comedian / techno DJ.
Well, he would have been listening, wouldn't he, by then?
Yeah, well, he would have been listening now too, yeah.
Yeah, because Red Wolf started in the 80s, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was basically Lister or an affable chappie. I don't think he was in Coronation Street at that point, was he?
No.
That was way later.
But, everyone in this show were presenters that we'd previously seen telling the journalistic truth or presenting, real things to kids.
Yeah. So it was eminently believable for most of us, I think. And terrifying. So there's. Have you got an intro bit for Ghostwatch? Have you written like director and such?
Oh no, we don't do intros anymore. No.
When did that happen?
Hellraiser killed my need to write a synopsis because I struggled so much that I'm like, we'll just talk through the synopsis. Ghostwatch, 1992, directed by Leslie Manning. Leslie Manning, she didn't really do a lot of other stuff other than kind of TV stuff. I think what we'll find, especially in the special feature that we've got for you later, that Ghostwatch they made it not thinking it would be a cultural phenomenon, which it was, a genre kind of landmark. It was just a normal kind of show to them, and Leslie Manning was like a kind of a jobbing TV director. So nothing special about the people that made it.
No.
It was just BBC people at the time in a high point of the BBC. It was part of a fictional anthology series called Scream One. Again, I
didn't know that.
As a kid, I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
All that I was told by my mother was, there's a creepy ghost thing that the BBC are going to do. Do you want to stay up and watch it?
She wasn't wrong. It was a fucking creepy ghost thing. So
going back to my memory of watching Ghostwatch, before we go into other people's memories, I was so traumatised, and I think it finished 10 o'clock, so it was 9 till 10, something like that. I was so traumatised I wouldn't go to bed.
It was Watershed, wasn't it? Because Watershed was 9 p.m.
Yeah, so I was crying, I wouldn't go to bed. So I distinctly remember my mum made me jam on toast, which was like my little treat thing. So I ate a bit of jam on toast, and that calmed me down enough to go to bed.
Jam on toast.
I just remember it. It's a cool memory.
That's what I have now before I go to bed to calm me down.
So you have in bed as well, just like jam on toast.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so it is genuinely scary, especially so looked at through the lenses of the eyes of a 12-year-old or younger at the time who didn't know that it was a fictitious piece.
Yeah, so let's assume that people, because we've got unboxing videos on YouTube now, so we have to assume that people listening to this podcast might not have seen it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all good.
So Ghostwatch is a fictional, yes. It's a talk show. It's a
studio set,
a studio live program that is said to be investigating the haunting of a family in the suburbs.
Yeah, a real family.
Of London. I think it's London.
I think so.
It's based on the Enfield haunting, the famous Enfield haunting, which Ed and Lorraine Warren got involved in. It was a famous haunting.
Famous charlatans, Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Yeah. It was 50s or 60s in London.
Yeah.
Featured in the multi-million-dollar horror film The Conjuring Part 2.
Part 2, which has some of the worst British accents I've ever heard.
It does. But yeah, so we're going to talk a bit about that later. But so that's what Ghostwatch is. And as we say, some of the best TV presenters at the time were telling us that this kind of house was being haunted, and there were kids involved, and there was an entity called Pipes. Who would
an entity? Yeah.
Who would the camera would move and he'd be stood in the corner. And
there were lots of like just background shots of Pipes where the camera would pan and he'd be there, and it'd pan back and he wasn't there. It was really creepy.
And we cut in between the studio where Parky's interviewing people who've had hauntings. We've got call-ins coming in, which obviously were fake call-ins for people that were saying they'd been haunted, and then I think they get a call in halfway through that's like maybe connected to Pipes, and then and they bring on like a paranormal expert at one point who is like, I'm pretty sure Del Boy's girlfriend from Only Fools and Horses.
That's who it was. I was trying to figure out. She definitely. I mean, as a kid, I don't think I would have picked up on that. As an adult, I go, oh yeah, that's that actress.
Yeah,
whose name escapes me, but yeah, she was one of Del Boy's girlfriends.
If anyone, I guess the best thing that we can say to modern audiences, modern horror fans, if anyone has seen Late Night with the Devil, and most modern horror fans have and love it, it owes a great debt to Ghostwatch.
Yeah.
It's a very similar setup.
Also, on the subject of things that have been heavily inspired by it, you've seen Host.
The
Zoom one.
Yeah.
So there's a bit in Host where if you haven't seen Host, for the benefit of the listeners, it was conceived, recorded during lockdown in the UK, so everybody had to stay in, and everyone was, if people were meeting up, we were meeting up via Teams or Zoom, hanging out on camera rather than in person. And Host centres around this group of girls who get together to do, is it for someone's birthday?
Yeah, I think so.
For someone's birthday as a treat, they all get together online, on camera, on Zoom, they get a medium, like a spiritualist medium type person, to host a seance for them, which, being a horror film, goes about as well as you'd expect.
Yeah.
But there's a scene specifically in Host where they think everything's fine because they're looking at a camera footage of someone and think, well, she's all right, she's there just hanging out or whatever, and then they realise, they go, hang on a minute, that's from like an hour ago. Something was playing the footage back. It wasn't actually live footage of their friend. It was something covering up the fact that everything was not all right, and that happens in Ghostwatch.
Yes. Oh god, Host is a great film.
Yeah, it's really good. Weird because it's only like an hour long.
Yeah, it created a genre. It created the Zoom horror.
Yeah. I mean, it was inevitable that someone would do that.
Yeah,
it's like pandemic horror now. Like, I don't know. I mean, I guess there was like bird flu, birdemic horrors, like from Asylum Studios.
Birdemic.
But there was that guy who did. I can't remember the bloody name of the film now. There's a guy called Andy Mitten who made The Witch in the Window.
Oh yeah,
and Yellow Brick Road. He did one about the COVID pandemic, sort of. Was it called Harbinger? Am I got the right name? I can't remember now.
I'm getting mixed up with my COVID horrors now, which is really bad that you can say. Which is really bad that you can say.
But that's the point I was getting at, was that it was inevitable that there would be a COVID horror pandemic.
Yeah, pandemic. Very good
about pandemics.
But yeah, so Ghostwatch incredibly influential. One of the things that I've been shouting to the rafters to anyone that will hear me, and that's basically myself, that I shout in my living room to myself. The Insidious films, or the James Waniverse. So we talked about Conjuring 2, based on the Enfield haunting, which inspired Ghostwatch as well. So Insidious's first film, the Red Demon, who's kind of haunting. You find out later in the film that he's haunting a boy, but he's previously in the beginning of the film you think he's haunting the bedroom. Yeah. And these shots of him stood in the corner, and there's like the design of the boy's bedroom. Yeah. I remember watching that at the cinema and thinking, that's Ghostwatch.
I never even put that together.
And
until you mentioned it.
James Wan has never said, to my knowledge, has never said on a commentary or an interview or anything that Ghostwatch inspired him. And hands down, and obviously one of his films is The Enfield Haunting, which inspired Ghostwatch. And Insidious, there are some entire shots and the design of the boy's room which reflects.
Yeah, and you know what? Now I'm seeing the image of that particular image of the demon from Insidious with his hand up in the air, like the claw
in the corner of the room.
Yeah, in the corner of the room.
That's literally that shot where Pipes is behind the curtain.
Yep. Never really picked up on that before, but you're absolutely right. But you know what? Because obviously we've got our first ever guest coming on the show later, which has opened the door for more guests, I think, now that we know what we're doing. We'll get James Wan on.
Yeah. Do we really know what we're doing?
No, but
wait, you want to get James Wan on after we're just saying that he's basically a hack that stole?
We didn't say he was a hack. We said
pinnacle
he was
of British television. Yeah,
everyone's inspired by something.
No, I love James Wan. One of my favourite James Wan films.
Hey James, so if you're listening,
Malignant.
We don't think you're a hack, and we'd love you to come on the show.
Yeah, but yeah, so its legacy is quite obvious, but I think its capacity as a phenomenon at the time.
Phenomenon. Sorry.
Yeah, you've got to. It's the law when someone says that you've got to do that. I think at the time it was quite shockingly controversial. There is so I forget his name at the moment that has the kind of YouTube channel Behind the Curtain.
Richardson.
We will mention him later on. So keep your ears out for that.
Yeah.
But basically, there's someone that archives and studies the production of Ghostwatch. He archives all these kind of interviews of variety shows and like British talk shows of the audience saying, how could the BBC do this to us? How could they convince us that ghosts exist? And there was more, perhaps, obviously we'll lightly touch upon, there was a death involved with Ghostwatch. Did you know that?
I think I did, somewhere in the back of my mind, yeah.
Yeah, so there's an unfortunate, I think it was a teenage boy.
Oh yeah, he got so freaked out by it.
Yeah, so he had pre-existing mental health issues, and I think he had a boiler issue at his house, and his pipes made the same noise that the pipes make in the show, and I think the creators did not have this in mind, but I think it's a testament to how potent something like this was back in 1992.
And probably why it was explicitly stated in the beginning that we obviously missed that it was a drama.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't understand.
And it was in the Radio Times.
I didn't understand. I mean, you were, 12? I was like 8. When you have those little BBC idents at the begining, you don't listen to them.
No.
It's just some adult talking about things. I just want to watch the show.
Yeah, I just want to see a ghost.
Yeah. Do you have any more experiences or comments from that?
Yeah, we've got one more. So this is from Jen Eggleston. She says, I was 10 and watched Ghostwatch live, as did we, Jen. My mum told me not to, as she rightly thought it would freak me out at bedtime, so I watched it on my little black and white portable with the sound way down, got to the recording of Round and Round the Garden and shut it off. Yeah.
Pretty much. I tell you what,
forever a cursed nursery rhyme, or whatever the hell you want to call it.
Yeah, I tell you what, different parents do different things. My mother actively encouraged me to watch it, whereas this very smart parent here was like, no, it'll traumatise you.
Yeah,
but
my parents were not so smart. I remain traumatised. Oh, sorry, I tell a lie, there's one more. It kind of segs into threads a bit, because when I put it on social media, I asked for experience as to both of these productions. I watched Ghostwatch live on TV that night. It was very creepy for most of it. The end went a little daft, though, which arguably I think it did. I think at that point, especially for adults, it probably became less convincing the more that the demonic voices and stuff started appearing.
Yeah,
not for me. Exactly.
And again, like if you watch it nowadays, there's two ways you can go with the ending. You can say it's a bit daft, which it kind of is.
Yeah.
You could say it's really cool. Because I love
it's cool. I think in terms of daftness, it means if you're trying to maintain an air of realism, it's daft. If you want a cool horror ending, then it's not. It's a cool horror ending.
Yeah, it is a cool horror ending, like the sound of the cats. So
Yeah,
there's
oh my God.
audio motif throughout about sound of cats, and then that's linked to, I think, one of the stories
Sarah
they tell
Green
about
disappears into a black
yeah.
hole under the stairs.
And then you hear the cats at the end, and I think
Yeah.
I'm getting goosebumps
I did a
talking
little bit
about
when you
it.
started. I forgot about the cats until I'm hearing that.
Right at the end, you hear the cats,
hell.
and then I think the Parky's like staggering around in the dark in the studio,
Yeah.
and then you get the impression that, like, I think Parky's possessed.
Yeah, he
by
starts
pipes.
talking. He starts reciting the poem, doesn't he? The round around the garden, and then
you hear a cat screech, and then it ends.
Yeah.
And
my hair's on my neck.
yeah.
Because before this, the studio has become chaos because Pipes has come out of the TV into the I think supposedly into the audiences, hasn't he? But he's there. There's a shot of him on one of the many secret or blink and you'll miss it sightings or appearances rather of Pipes. There's one where he's in the rafters up on the rigging above the studio,
which I didn't think about until it was mentioned in our guest interview. I like glossed over that. Even when I watched it recently, I kind of like glossed over it.
And there's a bit where he's standing in the crowd outside the house when the camera pans across the crowd of like locals.
Yeah,
as all the shit's going down in the house, and Pipes just stood there with his manky face.
Yeah,
in the background.
It's really interesting the way you put that then, actually, because like Pipes has like come out of the TV because he's crossed over from the two different sets. It's like in the suburb and in the studio, and he crosses over. And I'm thinking about like how things are effective. When I was an adult, I watched Ringu, the Hideo Nakata's Japanese horror,
terrifying,
very iconic horror. And I couldn't sleep for days at the bit when she comes out of the TV.
Oh, it's horrible.
The concept of that was mind-blowing to me as an adult. So imagine being a kid and thinking there's this ghost that can cross over into a live TV studio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, the ending is silly, but it's also very effective.
It is very effective.
Putting myself back in that kind of memory of 1992, we both got like kind of goosebumps.
Yeah. I think we'll wrap up this section of the show here because we're going to go into an interview with someone who actually worked on Ghostwatch. A coup for us, our first ever guest. And the full version of this will also be available. We've edited it down for this episode, but the full version is going to be out there via our usual release platforms. So have a listen to this and we'll be back after. Okay, tonight's guest is a veteran in their field, having worked on such beloved TV productions as The In-Betweeners, This Time with Alan Partridge, Big Train. I was really excited to see Big Train on your resume. I love that show so much. Afterlife, Ricky Gervais's Afterlife, and many more. But what we're perhaps most interested in talking about tonight is his work on 1992's Ghostwatch. So welcome to the show, Mr. Richard Drew. Thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome.
Yeah, hello. How are you? All right.
So, as Gaz alluded to, you've had quite a storied history in British television. You've had a hand in some of certainly my favourite shows, up to including and after Ghostwatch, which we'll be talking about this evening mostly. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Well, I've been doing it 38 years now. Started my career at the end of the 80s. In BBC Wales. I'd been a student at Newport Film School prior to that, so that's kind of that's why I was sort of in Wales at that point. And then, you're finishing your film school course, looking for your first job, and BBC Wales and HTV Wales were the nearest TV stations, TV studios, and so that's where I badgered, and then got a break in BBC Wales, where I kind of did 5 months straight out of finishing film school. In terms of, so you asked about the appearances of Pipes. They were scripted, so there was definitely moments, when he's up on the gantry in the studio, and then obviously the reflection in the window in the house. Now that I was there for every day of the shooting. So as art director, I'm also the standby art director. So I'm on camera checking shots and making sure we're seeing what we should be seeing and dealing with the props and the daily prop requests. So I remember all those sequences happening, and I seem to remember the appearance of Pipes in the window. It was just like, well, we can get a good reflection here and we can hide him behind the curtain. So I think the camera moves one way, you see him, the camera moves back, and then suddenly he's gone.
Yeah.
I think he's literally tucked behind a curtain, and then when there's another appearance of Pipes, when they're looking back the other way, and I think he hides behind a sideboard. So it's kind of rehearsed, but it's nothing. I think why people like it is a lot of those effects are very real. They're real effects. There's no
Yeah.
there's 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 a artifice to it because obviously you're hiding, getting somebody to tuck down. But it's not like we're CGIing things or anything. It's all a real. It's quite old fashioned actually. It's just very
We're big
real.
fans of practical effects on this show, Ken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always call them handomatic as a sort of as a turn of phrase at work. Low tech is handomatic. So yeah, all those kind of appearances are just rehearsing the camera position to make sure that when the camera swings round, it's had enough time for the chap to hide behind a chair, basically. But I mean, the little effects in the house with the pooling, the perfect circle of water. Well, I did that, and that's just gelatine. That's just water and gelatine, just in a perfect circle directly under the lamp. The pictures falling off the wall. Well, that's just clearly a nail from one side being pushed through a wall, and then the same on the other side when the mirror falls off. So that
Simple
wall
beauty.
that wall in the house is a creation, and that's deliberately put in there. Ken designed that for that very moment, for the two-way moment. The banging of pipes, well, that's me hitting a radiator with a cricket stump. That's all it is. I'm upstairs, they're downstairs shooting the scene. I can hear my cue, and I just hit a radiator with a stick. It's and then the actors can react to it. So it's all fairly low tech.
How incredible
But
that
marvelous
could
because of
elicit.
it. But marvelous because of
Yeah.
it. And I mean,
Yeah.
even with the set. So you were talking about the set. So obviously, although I was there when we were dressing the house, I kind of came in at the end a little bit on that. I did do a lot in the girls' bedroom in terms of all the posters and the kind of rearranging all that stuff. So all those Jason Donovan and Bros posters and all that stuff. That was some of the stuff I put up. And then there's a photo that appears as a large black and white photo in the studio of a pillow flying through the air. Well, I'm throwing the pillow and the photographer takes a photo. I mean, it was just the two of us in the room capturing that moment. But I kind of I had a bit more involvement with the studio side of it. So you're absolutely right. That kind of talk chat show kind of vibe. It's definitely got a bit of a news night. I've always thought it feels a little bit news nighty.
Yeah.
It feels quite serious. I mean, I think there's the monochrome look of it is very intentional from Ken. I think I got asked about this fairly recently. Do I think it's dated? And to a degree, it has, because the video wall is just the old-fashioned TV cubes, TV sets stuck together. But where I think it's dated is oddly in the lighting. I think it would benefit. I think the Ghostwatch set, if I was doing it now, would maybe benefit from a bit of colour, but not strictly come dancing colour. Just a sense of a colour, or the mood changing because of a colour, which you could very easily do with modern lighting now, with all the LED lighting and moving lights and LED strips and all the rest of it. So you could change the color, because a black and white set means is great because you can put a blue light on it and it will take on a blue hue, or put a red light on it and take on a red hue. So it's actually weirdly, it's designed perfectly to take color, but actually what I would imagine that was the producers and Leslie and Ken having conversations, probably not conversations I was party to. They stuck with a very stark, lighting state. I think if it was me designing it now, I'd push for something a little bit more moodier, maybe. Also, the walls with all the images on, they would all be video screens now, probably anyway.
Yeah.
Low tech. What? Sorry, I'm just rambling now, aren't I?
No, feel
As
free.
I say, I'm rambling, and I'm not even dressed for it.
We like rambling.
But the all the images on the walls of the set, all the ghostly images. I mean, that's about as low tech as you can get. We were in the BBC. BBC used to have a reference library for the design department, This is obviously pre-Google and all, Google image searches. And Ken and I found this book on Victorian doorknobs and knockers, bizarrely, but we did. So we were photocopying them, and as we were photocopying them, I think we either accidentally moved one or we just thought, oh, what if we did this? So in effect, what we did were all the ghostly images are basically photocopies of doorknobs and knockers, and this is a podcast, so I'm trying to describe it with my hands, and obviously it's useless. But basically, we moved the book on the photocopier as it's photocopying, so you get this kind of slightly distorted image, this ghostly image. And that's all it is. So the images that are then blown up, and we use this company up in Wigan called Scanochrome, which were a new printing process that was just coming out. I think it had only been going a year, and Ken had read about it somewhere. So they were able to take a photocopy and basically blow it up on a very large scale and print it onto the gauzes. So the set is just a series of printed gauzes. But those images are black and white images of Victorian doorknobs and knockers, and just photocopied and twisted. That's all they are. And it all comes from, I've got my little book with me. Again, I can't, this is a podcast, this is rubbish.
We'll know. We'll know.
I will send you all these bits and pieces, but I wanted to show you, I'm going to show you this, and we can obviously post this. But this was what Stephen gave Ken early on, and I've got the only copy of it, although, so that is the ghost image that's above the fireplace in the set. And this was sent, this is what Stephen, because it's written on the back there, it says, Ken, this is the ghosty images. This is the ghosty image as per our phone call from Steve. So that was his reference that he gave Ken that led on to the design. That was kind of it. And if you look at that ghosty images, you've got folds in the fabric. I mean, it is pretty much, it's like somebody with a sheet over their head. That's all it is. But the folds in the fabric on that image, definitely Ken picked up on those. And that's why everything's got a wavy quality to it. Even the floor pattern on the floor of the studio is just a broom dipped in white paint and, used like a giant paintbrush to create a sweepy line across the floor. And that all comes from that single reference that Stephen sent Ken.
It's kind of subtly unsettling as you watch it.
I think so. I think it, because you're not quite sure what you're looking at. And I think sometimes the best sets are like that. Your eye can't, completely focus on what is it I'm seeing, And also it's quite a lot of chat shows, especially. I used to work on the Jonathan Ross show when it was on the BBC. And a lot of chat show sets, you don't want anything that's going to get in the way of the main reason why you're there, i.e. the person being interviewed and the interviewer. So you don't want anything that's going to interrupt that, because that's what you're tuning in for. You're tuning in to see a face talk to a face. So the set is quite interesting like that. It's all about the focus of those two chairs and the little rug in the middle. Again, the rug in the middle and the two chairs have got wavy backs to them. They're quite high back chairs, which is quite unusual for a chat show. Normally, you don't have anything with such a high back because of lighting, but backlighting. And and also it means when you're cross shooting, you can catch a bit of shoulder in shot. It helps sometimes with eye lines. So they're quite unusual in that regard. But if you look at the shape of the two chairs on the set, they're S-shaped. So again, they're picking up on this kind of curvy thing. Yeah. And then the coffee table's doing its own thing. And then the rug in the middle is a kind of shag pile rug, weirdly. Circular rug, but it focuses the eye. So it's creating a little, a centerpiece, and it's focusing the eye. And then everything else beyond it kind of just drops off. As I said, I think that would be the one thing, if I was doing it now, I'd probably make the background a little darker. So it's all about the focus of the two people. But yeah, that's the intention anyway.
Have you, by any chance, seen Late Night with the Devil?
No.
It's it's for all intents and purposes, it's the same premise as Ghostwatch. It's a American-made film that came out last year. It's about a chat show host, where it slowly becomes apparent that supernatural things are happening. Obviously, incredibly indebted to Ghostwatch itself, but that has a very I think it's actually set in one of the old American '60s shows. So that's a very dark
Nice.
reds and oranges, like for
Nice.
yeah. So that's what that reminded me of it as you kind of describe what you would have.
Oddly, for somebody who was involved in this particular program, I'm not a big horror fan. Um,
That was my next question.
yeah, I'm not. I'm not. Well, well, okay, here's a generational thing. There's a lot of kids growing up my age who saw Salem's Lot on the TV for the first
Oh,
time
the
in the
Tobe
late
Hooper one.
70s.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think David Soul's in it. Would that be right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Absolutely scared the crap out of me. I mean, big time. And I really can't watch horror films. I really struggle with them. I've watched The Shining, and I've seen a couple of zombie movies, but they really aren't a genre I can get my head around. And it's Salem's Lot's fault. It
Specifically,
it scared the crap out of me.
was it the bit where the kid starts floating up to the window?
Yeah,
I think
the
that got a
window.
lot of people.
Yeah.
Every time, and I know other people who feel exactly the same. And I remember watching it, my little black and white portable TV in my bedroom when if it was late 70s, so I would have been 11, 12, 12, nearly 13. Just scared the shit out of me. I mean, really did. And
It holds up.
It had an absolute lasting impression on me. I really can't go near horror films. They just, yeah.
So,
The vampire looked repulsive as well.
Yeah.
He looked horrible.
I think Mr. Barlow.
Yeah, Barlow, that was it.
I think given that observation that you're not a big horror film watcher, I'll probably switch one of my questions around to just an observation. One of the things that I've always kind of fought for is the James Wan horror universe, the billion-dollar franchise, including Insidious and The Conjuring. I've always said to people that he's never said it in interviews, but he's incredibly indebted to Ghostwatch, specifically Insidious, which is about a demon that inhabits the bedroom of a young boy in the suburbs. And it's incredibly stylistically,
whatever you say, yes.
including appearances of the demon in Insidious are almost exactly like Pipe standing in the corner behind the curtain. And then,
you know what?
Of course, later on, James Wan would then go on to direct The Conjuring 2, which is based on the Enfield haunting, which Ghostwatch was kind of inspired by.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the legacy of that.
Yeah. Well, the Inside Number 9 boys did the live broadcast, didn't they?
Yes,
of course they did. Yeah,
brilliant. Yes,
that's that's definitely a homage. Well, I know it is. It's a homage to to Ghostwatch. It is quite extraordinary, the kind of legacy of it beyond. I mean, what is it now? 33 years. It'll be this year. 32, 33 years since it was first broadcast.
Yeah, but
and I'm doing a talk down in Brighton in October about it, and it was really funny. I did a chat a couple of months ago, and I mentioned it because I was doing a chat about my career, oddly, just to a load of film fans, and I mentioned it, and then straight away everybody jumped on that, and I've been invited back. Basically in October to talk specifically about Ghostwatch. So it kind of has this, this this afterlife. It carries on, and sadly I'm the only man standing now because Ken passed away a few years ago, and John, who was the prop buyer, passed away a few years ago as well. So I'm keen to keep chatting about it, as long as people want it. It's I was there, and there was this, there was a horror exhibition at the Somerset House a couple of years ago. I don't know if you guys were aware of that. In London, and they had a couple of my drawings in a glass cabinet, so it's kind of weird, you know what I mean?
Wow, that's bizarre.
So I've now got something that's been in an exhibition, this sort of postscript of it. But as I said, I've got loads of stuff I will send to you. It's all in here, and there's some other stuff. I've got my copy of the Radio Times still.
Oh wow.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, if you can, I'd love to have a look at it. Thank you.
Yeah, so I've got all that. And then do you guys, I don't know if you're going to include this on the podcast. Richard Lawson, who does the the Ghostwatch website Behind the Curtains. Have you ever come
Oh
across
I'm
yeah,
that?
aware.
yeah,
I think I
yeah,
follow them on social media behind the
Yeah.
curtains. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Rich is just the super fan, and we got talking via Twitter a number of years ago, and I ended up in one of his books being interviewed, and he's just recently interviewed me for a DVD commentary for something, talking about it. But I mean, Rich is really the guy that has kept the flame alive because, I don't know that it would have got its first BFI release if it hadn't been for Rich. And obviously, I know the recent one you've just mentioned, the 4K. I mean, I think Rich has had a lot to do with that, happening. So,
Yeah, I was so
I
happy
love
when
him
that
for
was
that.
released.
I love him for that. I admire, I admire people like that who are, who just want to, as I said, keep the fame alive, really. I mean, for me, it was a point in my life, but as I said, it was like 10 weeks from start to finish. And, you kind of think when it's over, you'd never necessarily think about it again. And interestingly, for the first 20 years of its life, I probably hardly mentioned it to anybody, but for some reason, I think with the anniversary of the 30th year looming, and also there's a generation of people I know who grew up with it as well. I think, suddenly I find myself talking about it quite a lot, actually.
Hmm.
I think it's great.
Yeah. What a
So
legacy.
taking us back. So you say, uh, quick shoot, and then you kind of dismissed it to get on with your career, basically, which is completely understandable. However, to take us back to the time, having worked on the project, what was your take on the immediate backlash? Obviously, we mentioned Ghostwatch Behind the Curtain. I've watched a lot of those videos. He features archival footage of people on talk shows saying,
Yeah.
"How could the BBC do this? How could they make us believe in ghosts? How could they traumatize us?" Like, what was your take on that?
Well, I think, well, it's a drama because it's in the Radio Times. The characters are there. It's kind of like I couldn't believe anybody was fooled. I mean, if I'm brutally honest, I saw it. I think I do remember it going. I remember it going out because I think I might have videotaped it. But I was then very busy on one foot in the grave, so I don't really remember much other than maybe bumping into Ken in the BBC corridor and just saying, "Oh, how are you? Oh, yeah, well, that's all kicked off a bit, one thing another." But didn't really give it a second thought. But for me, because the listing is in the Radio Times and it's I think it's either it might even be introduced as a drama when the announcement's made. I just found it very hard to believe why anybody thought it was real, if I'm
I
I
mean,
honest.
only
speaking
recently,
personally, because I was 12 years old, so I didn't. I mean, 12-year-old me didn't read the credits at the beginning to things,
I
so I
didn't
didn't clock that it
either.
was a
Yeah,
dramatization, a
Yeah.
drama. Sorry.
I mean, I think the clever thing was getting Sarah Green in it. I think that was Parky, yes, but oddly Sarah Green because obviously she was on Going Live
mm,
at the time, and I think that was a very smart bit of casting actually to get her in. And she'd done some acting as a child actor, so she's really, really good in it. Craig Charles, they're all really
Yeah,
good
yeah.
in it. They're all
yeah.
really good. Parky's really
Gents,
good in it because he's slightly bemused of what's going on. He's kind of brilliant. It is just brilliant. Do you know that there was a bit in the script, and I really one regret, I threw some stuff away a number of years ago, and I think I threw my script away because I can't blooming find it. But there was a thing in the script about adding a silent, high-pitched tone to the broadcast, so only dogs would hear it. They just couldn't technically make it work. I think that was it. The limitations of broadcast technology in 1992 meant that they couldn't make it happen. But yeah, what we've said all along, it just very actually relatively a low tech way of doing things. But it is a very long time ago.
And that was Richard Drew, the art director from 1992's Ghostwatch, which we've been talking about throughout this episode. Thanks again, Richard, for coming on and sharing your insights. That was really interesting.
Yeah, like one of those where I kind of we brought him in to talk about Ghostwatch, but wanted to talk about his massive career across.
He worked on so much stuff.
Yeah, of a certain generation, specifically our childhood, pretty much everything. But yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So the fun part's over now, guys. Now it's on to matters most vile.
Oh, God. Yes, 1984's Threads.
Threads. See, I did watch it last year, and I started rewatching it for the purposes of this show, but I got about an hour in, and I felt like I'd watched enough. I think that was enough to go on.
So this is really interesting because it's actually relevant. It wasn't relevant when I think you had the idea of doing it, but since then, a famous director, I can't think who, David Fincher's coming into my head, but it's not David Fincher. A remake basically has been a prolific director or an up-and-coming director is thinking of doing a Threads.
Well, that ties neatly in. I was going to do another quick shout-out from Blue Sky because we've got some experiences about Threads as well from people on there. This is from Paul Quinn. He says, Threads is perhaps the bleakest television series of all time. Given the previous decade had seen Brimstone and Treacle.
Oh, my God.
Scum and Pennies from Heaven. That's some achievement.
Thanks for reminding me of those three things.
Yeah, it has the same inescapable horror as The Day After. And he says, God knows why it's being remade. So, yeah, I agree on all fronts there.
So Threads, directed by Mick Jackson, who has an incredible career. So Mick Jackson, who directed Threads, he directed, like, The Bodyguard. It was a Whitney Houston film.
Did he?
Yeah. He also directed the Tommy Lee Jones disaster film Volcano. Notable for being not as good, but almost as good as Dante's Peak, which came out the same year.
When did Congo come out?
Oh,
that was 1991, 1990?
A bit later. 4 or 5.
95, yeah.
Congo's post Jurassic Park, because it was part of that, like...
95. Jurassic Park was 94, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I'll say 95, 96 then, yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
You're right. Congo, not starring, but with a very brief role with Bruce Campbell. Our man, Bruce Campbell.
And starring the... I was on the cusp of saying the late, great Tim Curry then. I killed the man. He's still alive.
He's still going, kicking.
He's still alive. He's making a documentary about his life or something, or writing a book. I don't know, but he's amazing. But yeah, so Mick Jackson, director of big blockbuster films, but one day he decided to adapt a script from Barry Hines, who also wrote Kes.
Barry Hines.
Kes is another kind of uplifting northern fable.
Jesus.
So created in the wake of Cold War paranoia.
Yep.
And as a kind of adaptation, reaction to informational videos back in the 80s that like the BBC used to do, like, get on the, Americans would have it as like get under your desk, duck and cover, that sort of thing. But
duck and cover, hide from the atom bomb. That was in Quantum Leap.
Yes.
And it was in The Young Ones as well. Neil painting himself white.
Oh, God, yeah.
To avoid the fallout, to avoid the blast.
What a gulf, Quantum Leap and The Young Ones.
The Young Ones.
Wow.
From Threads.
The Cold War brings us together.
Yeah, like nothing else.
So, yeah, Threads was created off the back of that. And what else can we say? The title alludes to the interweaving connection of lives in a community, and the film itself is basically, the TV special itself is basically about how that kind of degrades and is slowly eroded and destroyed by atomic fallout.
Yep.
And that's pretty much it. We start, it's basically the first 45 minutes it's essentially like Coronation Street.
Yeah, it is.
It's like a soap
people
opera.
With Yorkshire accents doing Yorkshire stuff.
Yeah, like
there's even a whippet.
Yeah, there's a whippet. One of the main characters is like the corner shop woman.
Yeah.
And she's moaning and gossiping and selling papers and stuff.
You know what was interesting when I watched it? When I watched some of it recently for this, there's it centers around it. There's like a main character, Ruth. Yeah. And her partner at the beginning, right at the start of it, they're set up on the Yorkshire Moors in a car, looking out at the scenery and whatnot. And she's fantasizing about how nice it would be to live up there.
Yeah.
And he says, well, it's dead, isn't it? There's nothing going on. There's like absolute foreshadowing for basically the entire rest of the film, what happens in the aftermath.
Fucking will be soon, mate.
Yeah.
So there is a plot through line. There's several plot threads. Get it? Threads, hence the title. See?
Yep.
There's several threads. So basically, we were introduced to these characters, and then 45 minutes in, the bombs fall.
Yeah.
There's chatter on the radio about the escalating conflict between Russia and America, and etc. etc. There's like one of the characters is kind of like a government councilman who's moved into like an underground bunker.
He's like the chief executive.
Yeah.
Which I have some experience in local government.
You do?
And obviously Manchester City Council has a chief executive, but I learned from watching threads that apparently in a war-type scenario, the chief executive of a city gets full jurisdiction, military jurisdiction and all the rest. So he gets put in charge of the city, basically.
So that's what's happening in threads?
Yeah.
Yeah, because his wife... like,
I don't know if that's true, but I suspect it is.
Yeah,
But that's what the chief executive is for. In terms of this sort of disaster or war, they get special powers.
Yeah, because when we meet him, he's been given this job to go to this place. He has to go to. I think he's in Sheffield as well. He's
the chief executive of Sheffield City Council, basically, or whatever it is.
Yeah, and then he gets the call, and then he has a conversation with his wife, and his wife's like, "Don't go," and he's like, "Well, I've got to go," and he's very British about it. He's like, "Oh, it'll be fine."
Yeah. He's very stalwart, isn't he?
Yeah, so he goes. So that's one thread, and then the other thread is Ruth and her husband, and they're trying for a baby, and they want to get married, and they're introduced to like the parents and like the two families like mixing and stuff like that. Corner shop, we've got people milling about on the streets. We've got Ruth's fella's mate.
He's a mechanic as well.
He's a mechanic, so he's kind of his colleague, and then all these pieces are put in, and it slowly escalates, and then the bombs fall. Well, there's two attacks. There's one.
The first one that explodes in the North Sea.
Yeah, and then it's very clinical. You get like text on the screen. It's as if it's like a documentary. And towards the beginning, it says like Sheffield, and it's
it tells you the date and time as the story unfolds.
And Sheffield is like an epicenter of resource because it's steel.
Yeah,
so that would be a target. And I think the second impact is a direct bomb.
Yeah, actually on Sheffield, that's the one that fucks everything.
And then, so I think we'll talk about this, but I think nowadays you just get a normal. Oh, this is what happens in the aftermath of like the bomb, and like, oh, people struggle together and we find a society. That's not what happens in threads.
No.
In threads, everyone slowly dies and society descends
including
into
the cat.
wasteland.
There's a cat dying in it, but just after the bomb, you see a cat writhing around on the floor.
So that's actually really funny because it's like
not at all.
When the bombs fall, it is. So for anyone watching threads, when the bombs fall, there's a horrible like jarring montage of like things happening, like
there's houses exploding,
like a woman like wets herself, and then but there's a shot of like a cat, and the cat's meant to be dying, but what it clearly is someone playing with a cat off camera because it's doing a big stretch.
It's
doing a big stretch. And then later on, there's a dog, and it's meant to be dead, but it's just clearly a dog, just like really happy lying on its back. Yeah. It's pretty funny.
Yeah,
but
in principle, in theory, it's not that funny, but in execution, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. It would have been far worse if the cat had been realistically dying, I think.
Yeah. It was BBC wasn't that cinema verite back in the in the 80s.
No, it's no Cannibal Holocaust, is it?
Yeah, no. But so the bombs fall, and then we get essentially stages. We get we get confusion, we get economic destabilization, we get we get a little section in the third act that's basically the Fallout games. If anyone's play
it is.
It's the wasteland, and infrastructure is basically,
but without anyone being cool, like
no one's
Walter Goggins in it,
or Three Dog. So there's a really downbeat commentary, and I noted this when I was watching it again. You really could. It's fashionable to say, and we are old men, but you really wouldn't get it made nowadays because the commentary in threads, if you listen to it, it's really kind of like downbeat. It's like, if this ever happened, your government wouldn't be able to do anything. You're all going to fucking die. No one would be able to meet the demands. Hospitals wouldn't be able to meet the demands of these injuries.
Well, that happens.
Die.
That actually happens as part of the theatrics, doesn't it? Like they move everyone out of the hospitals to prepare for casualties, which is a completely wasted effort.
Yeah,
because everyone gets melted.
Yeah. Do you know? Did you know? Did you watch the hospital scene when you rewatched?
A post bomb.
Yeah.
No, I didn't get that.
It's so wet. There's so much liquid and fluid.
Oh god!
Like it's because the whole film is quite desolate and
Yeah.
and it's like a lot of dust and like thing. But the hospital scene is there's all different colours of liquid everywhere, reds and yellows, and it's
Jesus.
yeah, it's pretty grim.
It's like you say, desolate. There's so many things happen that are just awful. Like I mean, obviously there's the nuclear bomb, but it's like there's the woman in the house who basically half her face gets burnt off and she survives, so she's just in pain.
Is she the shop owner? Is she the corner shop owner?
I think she is. Yeah. She's stuck in her flat with her husband basically.
Yeah,
and he's coughing because he's dying of radiation poisoning, and then you've got someone stuck in a house with dead bodies, which you slowly start to hear flies amassing and buzzing in the basement. There's the pregnant woman who starts, and then the aftermath, the fallout bit is when everyone starts getting cataracts.
We'll get there. Before that, so basically society starts to collapse. The commentary is basically saying you're all fucked. Infrastructure cannot handle this sort of disaster. It's like, why are you showing it me then, mate? Just let me die.
Yeah. Thanks for showing me what's in store.
Yeah. So we go on. First, when infrastructure goes. Obviously, so for anyone that thinks that for any younger people listening that survived COVID and thought it was a new thing that people were complete fucking idiots during a time of upheaval, Threads was made 40 years ago, and there's a scene where people are like smashing through windows and stealing toilet papers and like shouting and stuff.
God,
people have always been dickheads.
Yeah. And everyone decides to leave Sheffield at exactly the same time, which means no one can leave.
And then moans about it.
And then complains to the topic,
yeah. So we get that, and then we get, I think, when the third act starts, the third act is really when it starts kind of going downhill, and we get like...
I think it starts going downhill quite a lot before the third act.
It does, yeah. But as we get into like Fallout territory, and people are getting... There's mass graves, and there's not enough people to put people into graves, so they just start dying in the streets, and there's like jails, and we can't keep people in jail, so there's the iconic from the front cover, the police officer that's got like the shroud,
the masky thing on.
He's kind of like trying to keep people from escaping this kind of fence, and there's a firing squad, and society's fucked. There's a really interesting concept that because there is no housing, they put survivors in other people's houses, and they go around to this cantankerous old man, and they're like, well, it says here that you've got 4 rooms and there's only one here, so have 3 diseased Fallout victims. And he's like, oh, they'll bring all the bloody souls and everything. And then the next scene, he kicks them out.
Yeah.
But the through line is Ruth, who starts off as like she wants to have a baby with her husband.
Luckily for her, she gets pregnant very early on.
Yeah, so the baby's all right. So she goes through the pregnancy. She eventually meets up with her husband's or fiance's mate. Yeah. And they try and have a life together. At one point, he eats a fucking diseased sheep.
They find a dead sheep, don't they? And that's another just the bleakest thing, because they're so hungry.
And they don't know anything about it either. They're like,
they're deciding whether or not to eat it based on the fact that it could just kill them, but they're so hungry anyway, they don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So they eat this raw dead sheep.
And I mean, let's not forget that if this happened now, you wouldn't have the fucking internet to Google if you could eat a radiated sheep. Because there'd be an EMP that have taken out all the internet.
And that's irradiated. Even without that, eating a raw sheep, I'm pretty sure isn't very good for you.
No. Yeah.
You're full of parasites and all sorts.
So we stay with Ruth. She has the baby. She has it in some horrible barn while getting pursued by men with guns. And then we cut forward. That's when we skip forward, and that's when you say, like you say, next time we see Ruth, she's old. She's got cataracts. Yeah. Nobody can speak properly because no one's using the English language. And then we go further. There's further, folks. So let's not forget. So
the worst is not yet been.
So I've got a little game that I played with myself just for watching Threads. I've got bleakest moment and second bleakest moment. So the bleakest moment is when I think a pregnant Ruth, she sells herself for dead rats. Ugh. So there's a man that's got a bucket of dead rats, and it's heavily insinuated that he's kind of offering to do things to her, and he'll give her a dead rat so she could eat it for the baby.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
So she has the baby. The baby grows up. We go forward like 20 years, and each time we go forward, there's a title card that basically says 10 years from now, we can't grow crops. The first crop has died. There's no water. There's no nothing. Yeah. Ruth's child is now 15 and all this stuff. Yeah. The second bleakest moment is Ruth's daughter gets pregnant.
Yeah.
And because
Not consensually, I don't think.
because we're in the latter stages of Fallout, she has a stillborn mutant baby. And
To her rape. Yeah, born of her rape, I think.
God, I even forgot that. And I watched it recently. I'm like, it's not consensual,
that's
is it?
how bad it is.
Because there's a guy and he kind of chases her.
Yeah,
and, like,
yes, it's clearly not consensual.
man.
It's awful.
So that's Threads for anyone who doesn't want to watch it.
I mean,
I won't put it past you.
I don't know how much more we can sell that to you. Obviously, it was great.
So at the time, and we just obviously you will have heard us speak about Ghostwatch, which was another BBC. It was another groundbreaking show, and Threads for the time, it was like nothing else that had been on TV. This was not something that I'd watched. I was born in.
I have a very vague memory of it. I remember watching milk bottles melting. When the bomb first hits into the windows, there's milk bottles, and I specifically remember that scene when it came out when I was 4. So unless I might have watched it at the time or a bit of it, and then my mum maybe didn't let me watch anymore, or maybe I just blanked it all out because it's so hideous. So
my mum, you couldn't really get it on VHS when I was younger, and my mum, she treated it in the same. So she hated I hated The Exorcist. Right. She wouldn't have the VHS in the house. She didn't like seeing the spine. Which is why it's one of my favourite films now.
Yeah.
But she kind of thought of Threads as the same as The Exorcist. She's like, I'm not watching that. You're not watching that. Wow. So that must have traumatised her in '84 when she was pregnant with me, probably.
I've got some commentary here if you want me to read a bit more out. This was from Reddit. This is the only one we got from Reddit.
Oh, yeah?
Because I do try and get involved with Redditors to talk about the show. And
Reddit's
stuff.
a popular website here.
It is a popular website in the world. So this was from a guy called Afro Nihilist. Afro Nihilist says, "This film there's a lot of words here, so just bear with me. This film is still devastating in its exploration of the mundane lives abruptly shattered by the decisions of unreachable powermongers and the unflinching hyperrealism of the tragically horrifical devolution of the humans that survive. Not even speech emerges unscathed.
Yes, yeah.
That end moment will haunt me forever. This is nihilistic cautionary art at its finest."
Yeah, 100%.
Very well put, Afro Nihilist.
That's a really good point about the bodies of power, because one of the plot, as we've said before, one of the plot threads of this are the kind of the councilmen in the underground bunker who are just completely hopeless. Like, at no point do they ever get anywhere into doing anything positive. They immediately go to infighting. They're immediately kind of... There's a really funny argument they have where we're going to have to start rationing our food, like 500 calories per person. What's 500 calories? And they just list what fat. It's just like a very large man is listing what is fat, like, I don't know, a bap, bit of butter, like chocolate bar.
Because once again, I mean, you could just Google that now, but not then.
Yeah.
That's horrific as well, because they all get trapped inside, and there's literally a dead guy in there with them just slowly decomposing. Yeah. The rubble falls on some guy's head, and then he's just lying there like a corpse among them all.
The hopelessness, obviously there's a reason it's called Threads, and it's the loss of connection. Once this happens, there is no help. Like, what use is the government when even the government don't have the tools to help you?
Yeah. It's terrifying. The whole thing's terrifying. I think we have to touch upon the being British and in the north of England.
Yeah.
It's quite real, isn't it, as well, for people of our age, because the cars you see on the street and everything, it hits harder because it's our way of life in a way. Yeah,
and I mean, even to this day, like, I'm from kind of a real working class area, and I go there to visit my mother like quite frequently. And if you go down there, it's no different from when they're going in the shopping and walking around the streets of Sheffield in Threads. Like, society doesn't change fundamentally. Especially in the lower classes, and so it is quite close to home.
I got a really good comment again from Blue Sky, and I think this sums up what I was trying to say. It's a bit closer to home for this guy. This is from James Turner. I've paraphrased it a little bit just for time restraints, but he says, "I was 13 and our teacher decided that Threads was a suitable film to watch instead of doing any proper teaching." Dad worked for Sheffield City Council and Mum in Lloyd's Bank near where the cash point lady had her accident. During the film, you could see the coordinator sat at the desk looking at the circles of blast radars and where the fallout would be, which included our village.
Good God.
We were the 80s kids brought up under the shadow of the mushroom cloud, so you can imagine the impact these had. My dad's work destroyed, my mum's bank blown up, and our village in the fallout zone. It sits there as a phenomenal piece of filmmaking, and also as the most terrifying film I have ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can add much more to that. That's if you imagine living there and watching that.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, we should probably go back to the fact that there is a remake, and like it's just as relevant today as it was in 1984, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
All Orange Man has got to do is piss off Red Man, and then we'll all be kind of having mutant babies and
cataracts and everything,
struggling to grow crops. I mean, I can't grow crops now, even with non-irradiated soil.
What hope is there in? The best we've got to look forward to is cataracts in that situation.
When I was watching it again, you've got to take the light things. You've got to take the light of some things. Every cloud has a silver lining, or
every mushroom cloud has a silver lining. As Steve Coogan once said, as his Manchester character Paul Carth, every bag of shite has a silver lining. So some of the lines in it were quite good. So I collected some. Oh, good.
So we've got the very simple when it happens, and one of the most traumatizing scenes in the film. And one of the characters is just like, Jesus Christ, they've done it!
They've done it!
They've done it!
That's it. That's Reese's partner and his mate.
It is, yeah.
By the car. Yeah.
They've done it. So there's some early scenes of left-wing protests.
Yes.
And we've got the famous interchangeable phrase, get back to bloody Russia.
Get back to bloody Russia.
They're talking quite early on in the film about abortions, and there's just this one kid that's just like, what's an abortion?
What's an abortion? Yeah. You know.
And my favourite in the entire film, not that you have favourites of funny things in this film, but Iran, that's not far east, you pillock. It's far enough.
Incredible.
Fantastic.
Threads. So recommended family viewing time for you. Have we anything else to add about Threads? Or
I didn't want to kind of delve into trivia for this much. I don't know why, because I just watched it and we had enough to talk about just actually the thing. But I did see one thing which was quite good. And I guess it kind of meets up with the interview that we had with the art director. The props. I think this was a quote from the director. The props department had shown me various options for the handheld LCD game featured in the film, which we all had when we were kids. I picked the Epoch Game Box Penta for Michael, the little kid, to be playing within the early scenes, as it seemed to show people being pursued by ghosts, a nice prefiguring of what would happen to him later. It was also poignant in the aftermath to see his father playing with it in an emergency feeding centre in a graveyard. It was the only thing he had salvaged that linked him to his son.
Oh, well, thanks for that.
Yeah, I came across that and I'm like, oh wow, more bleakness in the making of it.
I hitherto untold leather of bleak. Thank you, Ken.
Everyone should watch Threads. It's an educational film more than anything.
But it's great as well. It's convincing and terrifying in equal parts. Yeah,
but if you are triggered by any of the things that we've said in this, it's way worse to watch it.
There may be triggers that you don't know you've got, but they'll crop up in Threads somewhere. Yeah. You'll find a trigger in Threads. Everybody does.
It'll leave you very cold.
Yes. And with that, we're going to leave you hopefully not too cold. Hopefully you've enjoyed the episode. Pay attention to the end jingly bit, because that is it contains our social media details. If you want to contact us, if you want to email us, you can do. We'll read stuff out like we have done today. We like having people listen, and we like to talk to you.
Do you think anyone's ever called it a jingly bit?
Well, no.
Okay.
So yeah, listen on for that. We got next episode is Hereditary.
Cults,
yes. Cults and kids. Cults and kids.
Hail Satan, hail Payman, hail all of them.
Hail Payman. Rosemary's Baby and Hereditary, our next double bill. Spoiler alert. Yeah. So watch those before the next episode comes out, so you can listen to us talk about them. Tell us whether you agree. And that's it from us. See you next time.
See ya.
Take care.
Live from Manchester Morgue is brought to you on the 2nd and 15th of each month by Gary Hames and Ken Talbot on Spotify, Apple, Amazon and all major podcast platforms. Follow us on Blue Sky at killertunes.bsky.social and at kendomustdie.bsky.social. or email us at killertunes976@gmail.com.